Today we wanted to talk a little bit about a topic that is near and dear to our hearts here at Battle Axe Theater, and that's adventuring in MMORPGs. So what is it like to adventure in Project Gorgon?
It's a true sandbox. It's a true adventure. It's true danger around every corner. Punk and I have skilled up, capped some of our skills, or to at least level 50 or so, and we would go back to a lower level dungeon and still die.
Adventuring in Project Gorgon is not like your typical modern MMORPG. It's very much a throwback to the classic open world MMORPGs of yesteryear. Now, many modern games are referred to as a theme park MMORPG because you simply go from quest hub to quest hub, and this is not going to be the case with Project Gorgon. When you load into Project Gorgon for the very first time, you're going to be dumped into Anagoge Island, which is this newbie area, if you will, and it's completely open, and the only direction that you get is basically eat some food, it's important, and explore.
This game can be really unforgiving. You gotta be cautious. You gotta be real cautious. You gotta pay attention to your surroundings, and that there is a sense of danger in Project Gorgon. Hats off to Elder Game for that. That is an experience I have been longing for. Is not just going out there willy-nilly and just laying waste to everything in your path, which you can do at higher levels, but there's still, even at higher level, a sense of danger.
Now, right off the bat in Project Gorgon, you're going to discover that there is so much to see and so much to do. Project Gorgon is one of those games where there's a new adventure around every corner, whether it be bumping into an NPC with a funny story or a new hangout, or bumping into another NPC that has a new feature, or even just walking into an area that seems like it would just be a little area to explore, and then it turns out that it's got like a named mob inside of it that's pretty impressive, and you end up dying to it, and you have one of those moments where you're just like, you die, but you feel like you've had a ton of fun because there is that sense of adventure, that sense of exploration.
The world is very ugly. But as you're going through and you're working up your skills and you're doing your quests and you're working up your rep and all that good stuff, you quickly forget on just how ugly the game is, because at that point you're in it. You get to that point to where you find yourself wanting to log back on to Project Gorgon. You done forgot that how ugly it looks.
Before you even leave Anagoge Island, you're going to discover many NPCs that are going to offer tons of different dialogue and reasoning as to why you are on this island. And then you are going to find out that there are multiple ways off this island, and that is for you to discover. And in that process of finding a way off the island, you're going to discover all kinds of different things that you can do, from different trade skills to different combat skills to different mix and matches of those combat skills, to simply just exploring the island a little bit. So right off the bat, right as you get started, you're already seeing that like in-depth sense of adventure. And to put things in perspective, the first time that Def and I loaded into the island, we hadn't even gotten deep into the island, and we had already spent over an hour just exploring the general island of itself. And then we had took the rest of the night, and it took us about 7 hours of gameplay where we just kind of wandered around the island and we explored different things, different cave systems, different bosses and things like that exist on the island. And it turned into one of these adventures that I told Def myself, I said, when we played that, I did not feel like it was a chore. I did not feel like I wanted to move on to the next area. It was just that much of an adventure. So moving on from Anagoge Island, once you get off the island, there is just so much to do. Again, you're not going to have this quest hub per se to go to. Yeah, sure, you need to raise your favor, but in what order you do that, that's entirely up to you.
And then there's some lore in the game, but you really kind of have to dig for it. It's kind of like it's being like a regular human being or a regular person, and you're out in this land. And Punk was more involved with learning about a lot of the lore than I was. In fact, he took me on an adventure and he was showing me all this stuff. I started reading some of it, but I didn't read all of it, and he's like, dude, did you even read that? And I'm like, no. So I went back and I read it, and I'm like, oh, okay. What I'm saying is you kind of have to dig for it. It's there. It doesn't really have the best flow, But for those who like a good story and having to find it, it's there. And that's kind of the cool part, it's there for you to discover.
Now, there is a bit of a zone progression flow, which is kind of nice because it is nice to have that guidance there. So it's an adventure in the sense that you're actually getting out there and you have some enemies that are within your level range. And as you progress, the more difficult enemies become easier to enter combat with and defeat. And eventually you're going to come into different zones that have different things that are going to impact your character. And I think this is one of the most impressive things about Project Gorgon. So once you exit the Serbial Hills, Serbial area, you're going to enter Eltibule, and it's a different scenery, it's a different feel to it. And the enemies feel a little bit more difficult. And one of the things I loved about this is that first going there and first exploring, I was like, it was that classic feel of no, I don't want to be here. I need to leave. And then visiting it over and over and over, raising favor and progressing in my combat skills and trade skills to eventually be able to go into Eltibule and simply run around as if it were the newbie island. It's just that amazing feeling. It's not like these modern games that try to change the game in a way that they scale it so that way everybody's on even keel and you never feel like you're making any progress. This has that meaty feel of a classic MMORPG, and you feel the progression in your character.
Nothing you do is a waste of time. Everything that you do is going towards some form of progression. I mean, you got plenty of materials to forage. You got plenty of crafting. Crafting can be really fun in this game. It's a lot of work, but if you're looking for that older school MMO feel, this is your game. There's some camps that Punk and I do where we go around and we just kill everything in circles, and we got skinning, we got foraging, we got picking mushrooms. We got all this stuff to do in one little grind. And I kind of miss that. I kind of miss going to a camp and just kind of chilling, getting some XP while getting some resources. Good way to make some councils. There's all kinds of things to do. And when I mean everything has a purpose, everything goes to some form of progression, I mean everything. Even death. You die, you get XP for dying. You get your own death line, I guess, a death skill, or maybe not a skill. Yeah, it could be a passive skill, but you get XP, you get death XP. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's different. That's a unique take on the game, and we're trying not to be too spoilery on as we do this content for Project Gorgon, but it's really different. There's nothing you can't go out in the world and do, and it's not a waste of time. Does that make any sense? You go out to the world, whatever you do, it's for a purpose. That's awesome.
When I talk about some of these cool effects that take place in different zones, after you leave Eltibule, you don't have to take this route, but you're going to come into other zones. And I remember when I was having an exploratory mission, if you will, and I was just going through Eltibule, and I progressed through Eltibule, and I got to the entrance to Kerr. And when we went into the Kerr Mountains, when you enter in there, you're immediately going to be met with weather effects that impact your ability to perform in the same way that you did in other zones. And this continues on all the way through Ilmari Desert, out into Gaz. All the different zones beyond that have some sort of elemental effect, if you will. And this is something that's really cool because we hear about systems that we're going to find in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and Project Gorgon, to see it almost in a reality in and of itself. I've never experienced this before. Granted, this game is a spiritual successor to Asheron's Call, but it's one of those games that it just really delivers on it. Again, you go into the zone and you're on a mission to simply go train an ability or level up favor so you can access to different trainers, and you ultimately end up seeing so much along the way, dying just trying to get to a certain point because you froze to death. I mean, it's really crazy. And the thing is that even though the population of Project Gorgon is a little bit on the smaller side when we talk about comparison to other MMORPGs, you're always going to run into somebody. It's one of those games that keeps you engaged in multiple zones. You're always going to be going back to lower level dungeons, and it's just so crazy that I'm absolutely in love with it.
You know, it's kind of weird to say this, but there's not really any rating. There's not really any end game. And, you know, Punk and I have talked to other content creators, and some feel that they don't like that term, end game. Well, that's not a thing. When you're out there adventuring, that is your end game. You don't know when you're gonna die or live. You know, you gotta be cautious. You gotta be smart. Surroundings, all that matters, you know. And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but, you know, you go into a dungeon, you better have some friends, because that sense of danger is real.
Let's talk a little bit about the dungeons. So these dungeons are very much like the EverQuest 2 dungeons in the sense that you can grab a group of friends and you can enter into a dungeon, and you're not there for just a few levels. You're there for several days, sometimes a week, depending on the amount of playtime that you have. And the great thing is that you're always, again, going to be going back and visiting those dungeons for different types of materials that you're going to need for your trade skills, which is a really in-depth system in Project Gorgon, and I think adds to that element of adventure. So when you go into these dungeons, you're going to encounter different tiers of the dungeon. You're going to find different types of enemies. You're going to encounter different types of loot. I mean, it's just a hell of a lot of fun, you know, whether you're exploring a newbie crypt or if you're exploring Kurd Tower or the sewers out in Rahu. It's just one of those things where no matter what you do in a dungeon, if you're with a group of friends, it's a hell of a lot of fun, especially at the higher tier where there are more higher level players in there, and there's almost a spirit of competition for enemies, especially when it involves the daily dungeon and things like that. So in this sense, adventuring in Project Gorgon is still, again, very fulfilling. It really does give me that vibe of that EverQuest 2 feel that we enjoyed so much several months ago.
You know, we just want to encourage you guys, pick a skill you want to level, whether it's fire damage, ice damage, sword and board, you know, staff, bow, whatever you want to do, and just try it out, man. Just go out there and try it out. Pick up all your quests in the starting city and just go adventure, have fun, try it out for a night. Let's see if it becomes an all-nighter. You know, that's happened to Punk and I. You know, it truly is a game that is worth exploring.
It is fun. It is challenging. There is this sense of danger when you travel through the world, because if you get to the end of the dungeon, you're not going to get respawned nearby. You're going to respawn at the end of the dungeon and have to make your way back through to your group of friends. So it's very important that you work together and you take things slowly, and you never know what you're going to encounter as you're adventuring. Again, whether it be a random NPC with a funny story, or a certain boss that turns you into a certain particular animal when you're least expecting it. Adventuring in Project Gorgon is one of those experiences that is well-rounded, it's very worth it, and I really, really enjoy this.
And lastly, guys, I just want to say thank you. Project Gorgon was suggested to us by several people that follow the channel. And if you don't follow the channel, please consider liking. Please consider a sub. Check us out on Twitter, on Facebook, where you can keep up to date when our next video goes out or when we go live. And join the conversation in Discord. We'd love to have you there just to hang out and chat with us. But that being said, thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys on the next video.